Family. It's 8 o'clock. Y'all know what that means, right? It's time to talk. First, let me give a big shout out to Incision. Incision. If you haven't been to their platform yet, go to incision.care and definitely request your demo so you can see how this groundbreaking educational platform can transform your department into a more efficient department. It's not just about the training, it's how it's encompassed together and how it includes how to collaborate with the OR. It is very, 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 very needed in this space. Also, RST automation, again, groundbreaking technology where they're bringing AI to the forefront of efficiency, innovation, and quality. If you haven't seen their platform, go to RST Automation and request a demo today as well. And definitely tell them Time to Talk sent you. And also, I want to give a shout out to Turbot Surgical. This whole season, we've been talking about quality, efficiency, and innovation. That is the definition of what they're providing to the industry as well. You're changing the way that we look at, the way that we process, and the way that our workflow actually can be beneficial to a department. These are all the things that this season was dedicated to: your efficiency, innovation, and quality. Now, with that being said, we talk about quality metrics all the time. We talking about being more efficient all the time. And innovation has started booming since of the AI, revolution. Everybody's thinking about what AI is going to do for the departments. But the one common that I still see and I still hear in all of the facilities that I visit is that people always tend to say, hey, you're going to have to collect the data so that the C-suite will be on board with whatever the proposal or change is that you're trying to make your department more efficient. It's all about the data. It's all about the data. When I'm talking to, a couple of people, I started realizing that when we say data and we're throwing that word around, not everybody's talking about the same data. Not everybody's talking about collecting the numbers the same way. Some people don't even know how their numbers are calculated. So that's why with this show, we wanted to touch base on just that. How can the data analytics change the way that you look at your efficiency, your quality, and your innovation? Hey, Shamu, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Rebecca, I see you. Thank y'all for coming in. Again, this is, season 6. And the things that we've been touching on, I've been getting a lot of feedback about, and, as loyal viewers like y'all that, makes this go. And I definitely appreciate y'all being here. But the questions that I've been hearing is, what data, or how is that calculated? Even down to the point that people don't realize that, your productivity numbers can affect the number of FTEs that you have. We're talking frontline techs that don't get privy to all this information, but at the same time, if you're not producing and they start cutting FTEs and you don't know why, it could be a problem, right? So that's why I wanted to touch on a lot of this today, is because with those 3 metrics and people saying they want to improve their efficiency, they always checking for quality, and they want to know, hey, how can innovation play a part of that? That's where we want to touch on all of that today. As always, hey, we're here live. Can you, in the comment section, if you type in data, you will be entered into our drawing for tonight. So make sure you put data in the comment section, and also let me know where you're listening from. Well, as I always do, family, I went out and I said, who can I get that speaks numbers more than anybody that I know? Who can I get that actually uses the data for their everyday justification of FTEs, justification of equipment, justification of everything related to their department? I went on a tour of this gentleman's facility, and just in how, I want to say methodic everything was, and how everything led off of one thing that led to another, I knew that he would be the right person to talk about this. Also, in case you were hiding under a rock last year, his department also won the quality award. So that lets me know he knows a little bit something about equality, right? But how does he get to that quality? How does he get them to buy into what he's trying to accomplish in the department? That's what I wanted him to touch on today with y'all. So everybody, can y'all give them a warm time to talk welcome? And let's welcome Angus Bruce to the platform. Angus, my guy, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Uh, Welcome again. We've been here a couple of times.
Yes, we have. We have.
uh, for those people listening that don't know Angus Bruce, can you tell them a little bit about yourself, sir?
Sure. SPD has been my life. My first job was in SPD. I started out as a student. I've worked my way up from a student to supervisor to educator to manager to director. So everything in my career has been all around or all about SPD.
Okay, so a career SPD person like myself, I appreciate people that have actually been in those trenches. Like you've been frontline, you've been leadership, you've been in those meetings and getting those tough questions. You've been called to the OR, and all of it lends back to what we're talking about today. We're focusing on the data, but the overall overarching thing is that we're talking about efficiency, quality, and innovation, right?
Hmm.
So first thing first, how do you define quality for your people?
Well, one of the things that we do when we're recruiting for people, we basically tell them um, quality over quantity,
Okay.
quality over quantity. Um, a lot of people in this industry feel that quantity is a great thing. Yes, to some degree it is. But what's the point of having quantity if you're making up 10 widgets, and out of those 10, 4 widgets are bad. And then those 4 widgets now are leading to breakdown of rooms, which then gets into delays, which gets into costs. And as you know, when an OR room runs over even by 10 minutes, at the end of the day, when you add up that time, you're looking at they could have possibly done 1 or 2 extra cases, and that's revenue for the
Right.
OR. So, I always practice, quantity over quantity, quality over quantity. And eventually as time goes on, when your quality is good, though, the quantity comes along. Now, we talk about data, right?
Right.
And
So I
we
was going to
talk
get to that. I was
about.
like, so not to interrupt you, but we say quality over quantity, but we're pressuring people for productivity,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
the department's run off of productivity, and I get it. Susan can give you 10 trays all day long, no errors, no mistakes. But in an 8 hour period, is that what you're looking for when you come to productivity? And is that how you measure your productivity? I think that's the two things when people talk about the data part of it. Yes, I want the
Hmm.
quality trays. I'd rather have those quality trays than you knock out a whole bunch of trays. But does that backfire you at the point?
Well, it's how we also train people in the very beginning. You know,
Okay.
i- when you go to most SPD departments, when you look at their training model, it is okay. You're going to train today with this person. You're going to train tomorrow with that person. Now, on the third day, because you got sick calls or people are off for whatever reason, you yank them away from their training. So you interrupt their learning process. So then a week later, when they make a mistake during what they're supposed to be learning on the first week, the assembly piece, for example,
Uh-huh.
you put a lot more pressure on them. So I felt that when you're designing a orientation program, people in orientation should be off limits for anything. The department can be burning down. You do not interrupt their training and learning process,
Mm.
because at the end of the day, having a technician that has gone through a proper orientation, feels comfortable, their quality of work will be 10 times better than the person that you've yanked out in the middle of their orientation. And then after a while, their quantity comes into play.
So going back to the throwback, because Shamu was on and we talked about the training and preceptors and things like that. And I think that was one of hers, that you try to get that dedicated preceptor that's with that person, and that's their mission. They are training. They're not to be pulled to go do this. They're not to be pulled to go do that. You try to keep that singular focus on their training. I get that. But now when you're talking productivity, and if you have people training and now your department's been reduced to, let's say you have 5, but 2 people are those people are orientating or precepting somebody. Now you're down to 3. Do you expect those 3 people to give you the same work that those 5 would have done because they're precepted?
So there's a lot involved with this. There's a lot involved with this. So productivity. So
Okay.
so depending on the institution you work for,
That's what that was going to be the next one. Here we go. Here we go.
But it's all tied in, and you have to understand how it's all tied in. So depending on the institution you work for, it can either be case per trace per case, or
Okay.
length of stay. It just depends on the institution. Now, that's been the model for God knows how long. But with those 2 models, sometimes depending on your facility, it may not work.
Why
Now,
is that?
well, it just depends on what your facility is doing.
But I'm saying if they're saying that it's a proven method, like if I'm saying I booked these 9 cases and the average tray per case was 5, that means that you have this amount of time to do it. Your productivity should be ABC. It's a proven formula. How is that not universally accepted?
Well, because not all departments. So when you think about it, what they're doing is they're taking a benchmark, an
Okay.
industry benchmark. Now let's take 10 hospitals from across the nation, same bedsides, right? Well, here's the thing: their SPD departments are not all going to do the same tasks. You may have some that do like pumps and stuff like that, where other
Okay.
departments don't do pumps. But yet your finance department is going to say, well, we're going to hold you to this benchmarking model of this group of hospitals. So what it does is it puts a lot of pressure on hospitals that don't meet that benchmark, but yet you're holding them, you're saying that they're in this percentile. Now,
Okay.
when we talk about orientation, it's all about coding when it comes to productivity. When people are in education, in orientation, 90 days, if you're coding them correctly in your time management system, it tells finance that this person is non-productive. That
Okay.
time doesn't get counted against you. What a lot of people don't do is they don't do that. So then what ends up happening is it looks like you have all these people, and they're saying, well, you have all these people, but you're not busy. You're not producing the numbers we need you to produce.
Right.
So that's why I say it's all tied in. And for you to understand how all of that works, you really need to be talking with your finance person, the person whoever's assigned to your area. Sit down with them and have a real conversation about how all these things are tied in.
So
Some hospitals.
so
Oh,
to
go
your
ahead.
point, I want to ask this, right? So
Mhm.
whether it's trays per case, length of stay, I've seen people do it instrument level. I've seen people have this generic number that they come up with, and that's how you get your productivity.
Mhm.
If you're doing all of the little things, like you said, one hospital may be doing pumps, but if we're putting in our task, you know what I'm saying, where you get pulled away from a tray, you may have to assist the OR or empty the cart washer. If you're putting in your task, won't it balance itself out that the formula still works?
Yes and no. And that's why I
Okay,
say,
I'm asking because I know
yeah,
that people do
yeah.
all of these. I know, like at my old facility, we did have a task sheet, that stuff that's just ancillary, like it's not tray related. But if you left the table for anything, like answer the phone, or you had to go get the door, and all these, there was a task for that would balance out the productivity, because If you're not on the table, then you're not getting measured, correct?
Yes. So here's when you're talking to the finance folks. Finance people only see numbers, right?
Right.
Now, when you're talking about these task sheets and you have the tracking systems that you can pause and all that, they don't care about that. They don't want to see that. What they're going to be looking at is that benchmark hospital, the numbers that benchmark hospital you're being compared to, and how you are performing in relation to that.
Hmm.
So everything that you do as far as how you code people in the system when they're on orientation, putting in schedules and having people work to those schedules, managing your overtime appropriately, all those things have a lot to play into that whole finance piece. And that's what finance is going to look at. Not saying that you cannot use those numbers out of your tracking system and say, okay, let's talk about, the individual staff person productivity. It's great to
Right.
have those conversations. But if you're looking at it on a larger scale, what finance is looking at is the hospital that you're being compared to in this benchmark system that they're looking at. And that's where I say, you know, I will tell you for in my very part of my career, I didn't know these things.
Right.
And I was lucky to have a director at the time that was all about the numbers. And she would sit me down and explain to me how these numbers work. When I went back to college and got my degree and did all the finance piece and statistics, then I kind of understood how all of it now begins to tie in. And
Hmm.
then I started forming relationships with the people in finance. And when you have that connection, they really let you in on things that you really need to be paying attention to. Um,
So with that said, like so, and I could say it to you because I know that you've been a part of this. When we're talking C-suite data, proving that you need FTEs, to finance, all of that stuff.
mhm.
Is productivity the only data point that you need for that?
Repeat that. You broke up on that last part of that question.
So when you're talking C-suite, finance, FTEs, and they want
Mhm,
data points, is
mhm.
productivity the only data point you're collecting to prove your need per se?
So again, this is not a one size fits all.
Okay.
Depending on the
I think that's what
institution
people need to
you're
realize,
in,
that it is variable.
yeah,
It's not like we all
yeah,
follow in the same productivity model.
you're right. So depending on the institution you're in, the data that you're collecting in your tracking system to produce that productivity, um, some C-suites may accept that, depending on your institution. But there are some institutions that are hardcore following that letter to the T, where they're looking at the benchmark numbers out there and they're saying, no, we need you to get to this. And then that's when it becomes a problem because again, that model that they're trying to get you to conform to doesn't always work for you. You're thinking, you have 20 people but you need an extra 5, and they're looking at the numbers out there, the benchmarking numbers, and the benchmarking numbers are telling them, no, you can do this with 18 according to these other hospitals with the same
Right.
size. Yeah, so it's not one size fits all, and unfortunately, I wish it was a magic bullet that can solve the issue, but it's not. There's none out there.
So with that said, this is gonna stir the pot a little bit. This is gonna, sorry, Jesse. This is gonna be one of those. It's gonna be like, so when you look at the raw data, how can it help you identify the inefficiencies within your department?
Oh,
And what strategies can you use to address that?
so when you say data you can be collecting data on a numerous amount of things.
Right.
I'll give you, for example, we collect data on, first time start. We audit all cases, all case cards. We collect data on scopes. We collect data on a myriad of different things, defects and stuff like that. And I have it put together in a nice little spreadsheet. And one of the things that I've been trying to train my staff, my leadership team to look at is looking for trends.
Okay.
You know, I would tell you, example of this is, we had a trend going where um, every Thursday we had a blip. Now our defect rate is below 2%.
Okay.
It's now below 1%. So it's really low. So we had a trend going for like a couple of months where I was noticing every Thursday we're above 1%. We're like at 1.8. So I notice it because I look for those things. So I said to a couple of people, I said, "Hey, did you guys notice that there's an issue here? Every Thursday we're blipping out." And no one, they were oblivious to that. So I started getting them to pay attention to those types of things because that is telling you there's something wrong. And it may seem subtle at that point, but when it's consistently like that every Thursday, there's something going on in the production, and then you need to take a better look, a closer look at it.
So, for y'all that didn't hear that, he said his blip rate or quality rate is below 1%. That's why they won the quality award with the programs and stuff he put in place. And that's why I say, like, the data matters. They're below 1%. And I mean, I don't, he can tell you how many cases and stuff they do, but that's the kind of things that, as he said, you notice stuff like that. When you're looking at those numbers, you do notice when something's off. Those inefficiencies are happening, but if you don't know what to look for, then it's like he said, he asked people and they were oblivious to it because they're not looking the way that he's looking.
I'll give you another example of that. So, in institution where I work at, they've had a few rough years prior to me coming on, and it was pretty bad.
Okay.
So, when things go wrong with people for a period of time, they get PTSD. The slightest little thing happened, they revert back to years ago. But it's to them, it
True.
seems like it's like happening right now.
Right.
So, there were some things that were happening, and I said, okay, let's create a smart sheet. Let's start collecting the data on this and see what happens. So, we collected the data for a couple of weeks, and then I had a meeting, and then we were sitting talking about it. And the way the information was being conveyed to me was like, this is happening all the time. And I said, no, I said, well, the data is telling me that we've done this so many times, but yet we've only had this issue this one time. And here was the explanation for that one time issue. So they were like, oh, you're collecting information like that? Yes. If you report something to me that you feel that it's problematic, I'm
Right.
not going to say I got a gut feeling. Let's collect the data in it. Let's analyze it and see what comes from there. And then we go back and say, hey, this is what we found with this.
Hey, I see that he said they collecting everything from on time starts, scopes. I've seen people there collecting the data on sprayed, not sprayed from the pre-cleanse, like using all of these data points to prove the bigger picture. Like he said, like when people don't know that you're collecting the data, it would have been easy for them to blame sterile processing for something. But he had the points to say, no, this doesn't happen all the time because we all know that happens, right? It can be a tray that had an issue 6 months ago, and that thing happens. And it's like this happens all the time. And you're like, no, but how can you prove it if you don't have the data points? So that's where those specific strategies help you. You see the inefficiencies, and then you put these strategic things in place to try to fix them.
I see Bill is asking about iOS. Well, we had a high IUS rate when I got there, and I modernized it. So now we're like pretty much running zero. Um,
Okay.
but
Becca says, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
there's a lot of work that gets involved with that. And again, it's like again collecting the data to show the end user what the trends are and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we need to work on, and work can be done. It's just we in SPD have this. We know our job, and
Right.
when we're talking to people about it, we can say, I know we do this. This is what we do every day. But when you're talking to people that are a little bit more on the peri-op side and the surgeon side, the language starts changing. And that's when you say data and you say, okay, here's what the data is showing. Now you're beginning to meet them on their level of communication, and then they're like, okay, all right, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Because I've seen people use that IUSS data to end up getting more trades and stuff, right? So that
Yes.
way it keeps you from having the IUSS something. You've done this trade so many times. Hey, that means we may need more of those, right? And that's what I
Yes,
said.
that
Bill
is.
just said that. Bill says data helps to justify increasing assets such as sets and so on. So that's where that part comes in at, and also to justify more staff. I saw a good one up there from Becca just now as well. She said that trends and patterns captured in data tell a powerful story and one that drives change and informs better decisions. I think that's what you were explaining to us in that aspect of how you're using that data.
Yeah. Yeah. In SPD, we could there are days that you can be in shotgun mode a lot,
Right.
and the data helps you to take a pause for a second and really look at what's really going on, and then make a really informed decision, not a workaround, or not a knee jerk reaction, a really informed decision.
Okay, based on these inefficiencies, Bill, I'm gonna get there, but I do know that I got something on that, and I got to ask him another question, from one of our listeners. But we're gonna be right back with Angus Bruce right after this commercial.
In a world overflowing with noise, are you truly being heard? Or better yet, are you truly listening? Kenneth Campbell, industry author and expert in sterilization, is back with his latest book, Learn to Listen, so others are willing to talk. This book isn't just about hearing words, it's about understanding, connecting, and building trust. Whether you're leading a team, navigating relationships, or simply striving for better conversations, these practical strategies will transform the way you communicate. Imagine a world where every conversation leads to deeper connections, resolved conflicts, and greater influence. It's possible when you learn to listen. Are you ready to elevate your communication and create meaningful relationships? Learn to listen, so others are willing to talk. Available now.
Right, I got a tear in my eye. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I just want everybody to know that hey, look, that was the newest book. Learn to listen, so others are willing to talk. Definitely gonna be out on all platforms. If you are interested in getting some pre-orders, definitely reach out to me so we can talk about it. Just RST automation, efficiency, giving you that data that we talk about. So this is gonna be one of those where people say, they're not gonna like it, but how, in what ways does data enhance employee performance, evaluations, and professional development? I know we talked about you can see the trends and get the inefficiencies, but can that same data be then turned around and used for their employee performance?
Yes, and that's where those one-on-one conversations come into play with the supervisor and the employee. We all like to know that we're doing a good job, and we all like to see
Right.
when we're improving. A lot of the tracking systems that are out there can print out these productivity reports, and they should be used to have a meaningful dialogue with an employee, either on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, if possible. Um, Nobody wants to be hit at the end of the year when it's time for the annual eval. Well, this is your productivity, and it hasn't been great. that really demoralizes an employee. And it's so, let's face it, not everyone can do decon the same. Not everyone
Right.
can do tray assembly the same, right? But if you're having a constant dialogue with the employee and showing them how they're doing, what their numbers look like, and you develop a plan with them to improve if they need improving, most employees will work with you because now you're giving them constructive feedback, not that negative feedback at the end of the year. And I know some people that are really they like to be known as the top dog in the department
Right,
because
right, 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 right. Hey,
productivity
my
is up there.
productivity is off
So
the charts. So my
yeah,
productivity is
yeah,
up here.
yeah.
Now
Hey, hey,
that goes back to what we were originally talking about, though. So how is that quantitatively measured if this other benchmark says that we have equipment, you don't have equipment? They don't do the same amount of trades. Like this person over here is doing 10 trades. I'm doing 20 trades. You don't have no qualities from me. How can we be measured on the same analytics?
yeah, that's a tough one. And again, it's like every department is going to be different.
Right.
So like Carol Malone here asked, she made a question, put a question there in there about data and getting the C-suite buying. So I'm gonna give you the advice that a medical director gave me a few years ago. When you become a leader, it's all about the relationships that you build, right?
Okay.
The relationships are going to help you accomplish what you're trying to get accomplished. And when I say that, that means, okay, you're trying to get hold of C-suite. Well, you have departments like your infection control departments. You have other departments within the hospital that are tied in with you. And when you build those relationships with those people that are in charge in those areas, they can then become your advocate as well. You
Right.
know, if you have a solid relationship with infection control and you're showing them your numbers and you're showing them the things that you need to get done, they will then start advocating for you as well. So it's about the relationships that you build. Now, let's face it, we are in some tough times right now.
Yes.
So again, it's like y- you got to have those people in your corner that are going to help advocate with you.
See, y'all, you would read my mind because that was going to be part of the next little segment. Is how does those data points, help to drive that cross departmental collaboration? So when you go take those data points to infection control, or you take it to EVS, and they don't know what you're talking about, how do you get them to have the buy-in that you need something when they don't even know what you're referring to, because they don't know your metrics, they don't know what you're talking about when they're saying, when you're saying, hey, this isn't being done, blah 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 blah. They wouldn't know that.
Right. So we have SPD week, right? And SPD week seems to be the only week that we invite people into the department in some departments.
True.
So it shouldn't be that way. You should be constantly inviting people from all over the hospital into your department so they can see what you do. Remember, the relationships that you build, now you're creating that advertising mouthpiece. And they're going to be the ones that are going to advocate. There's a lot of people that don't know what goes on in SPD.
Right.
They'll hear the negative things, right? But they don't know in detail what really goes on in SPD. So again, you invite as many people as you can into your department so they can see what you are doing. And it's not just during SPD week. This is something that you should be religiously doing.
I think that's an important piece for everybody listening. It's not, and I say that same thing about when we talk about just like SPD week and, just different things. Like, why do we have to wait to that week to be recognized?
Yeah.
So if you're going to invite people during that week, why not invite them weekly, quarterly, monthly, just so they can see? Because like when you pop up with this data and nobody has an idea what's happening, you might lose something in translation there. So as to knowledge and nonsense point is, I might want to invite these individuals. How would you invite somebody to come see your department and, see what is happening in sterile processing? Do you have any suggestions for people that haven't reached out to EVS or infection control or facilities before?
Yeah, EVS is one of those departments that you really need to have a strong relationship with. Sometimes I know some places it can be contentious because EVS is short on staff, and they don't have enough bodies to move around. But
Right.
you build that relationship with them. Let's face it, just like EVS, SPD is a support service department. They're both support services departments. So, you should be supporting each other. I get it. Sometimes it's hard to deal with other department leaders, but think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture is you're trying to build that relationship. That relationship is going to help you down the line get what you need to get done.
Bill says SPD week is every day, and I've been seeing posts out here. It feels like we're in the trenches every single day, and that's what the people need to see. I think that's why those invites are important. I think that's why those tours are important. That's why when we're trying to build, and we talk about this on every show, trying to rebuild that relationship between SPD and the OR. Have you had them down to see what your process is like? Have you gone up there to watch a case and do all these things? It's the effort that you put in that's going to make people want to be an advocate and a partner. Like to Angus's point is, why once a week? Same thing, Bill. Like, why are we doing it not once a week? Why are we doing it once a year during SPD week? Why can't we invite you down just on a regular basis, routine basis? You should be doing these, what they call it, the gimbal walks. You should be doing these walks with these people all the time so you can see what's happening in your areas. They need to know what's going on in your areas and not you just doing it. So, Angus, to that point, how can somebody who is going to try to start doing something like this, how do they know what data to collect?
Well, first you got to understand what it means to collect data and how to collect it.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
I would tell you most hospitals now have a process improvement department, right? Reach out to your process improvement department. They are a great resource for you. They're there to help you. They can.
I got you, Bill. I'm gonna ask that one next.
They can teach you how to do process improvement projects. They can teach you how to interpret data. They can teach you how to measure. Because you just don't want to start doing things half-cocked. You're gonna do something that you're not quite understanding. And then when you go to talk to somebody that understands it, they're gonna look at you like, "What are you trying to do? What are you trying to say?" So, I would say if you have a process improvement department in your hospital, reach out to them. They're willing to help, and that's their bread and butter. Get yourself up to speed on it, and then you can start doing projects in your department where you're collecting data on a different amount of things, and then you have your evidence or your talking points.
I think that's going to lead into the question that Bill wants to have answered is, if you're doing all of that, is the data the justifier for implementing change? Do you use your raw data to come up with, say, hey, this, and this happened. I think we should do this. Is that data the true justifier for you trying to implement change?
Yeah, I mean, the data doesn't lie. As they say, numbers don't lie. So the numbers can tell you where you need to make improvements. Now, when you collect data on something, you make improvements. It just doesn't mean you stop. You continuously make improvements. That's just process improvement on a whole. You're continuously making improvements. You're always striving to be better than you was yesterday.
So with that being said, and we know the culture of departments, and we know how hard it is for people to accept change and these type of things, what are the biggest barriers you could foresee or have seen to implement a data-driven culture? Like if we're just saying that we're truly using the data to improve on the culture of our department, to improve our processes, improve our workflow, improve our relationships, what is the biggest barriers you see that could hinder you?
I would say it's the mindset of the leader of the department. If you have a leader that wants to make change, it starts with them, and then it then trickles down to their leadership team. And it can't be, well, I'll use John as the manager and I'm the supervisor. Well, this is what John wants to do. This is what John wants to know. It can't be that way. It has to, this is what we are doing. We are doing
I see what you're saying.
we are owning this, and this is the way, this is the direction that we're going in as a department.
But you have a lot of managers or leadership. I'll say, I won't say managers. You have a lot of leadership that is their MO. It's always because this is what the director wants. This is what this person wants. It's not about the overall department.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking data and driving these points, and you're saying that the leadership team itself could be your biggest barrier if everybody's not, it doesn't have the buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, so what I would say about that is that if you have members of your leadership team that are not willing to buy into it, then maybe they don't need to be in that leadership role. Maybe you need to do some evaluation of your team. And the worst thing that you can do to a department is have a manager wanting to make change, and then you have the supervisors not buying into it, because what the manager is going to be the direction that the manager is going to try to steer the department in, the supervisor is going to steer they're going to steer them in a different direction. And they're the frontline leaders, right? They're on the ground every day with the staff, so they have to be locked in with the manager. They have to be marching in the same direction. If there's a difference in the direction, that's where you get chaos, and then that's when all of the clicks and all that stuff comes in, and it doesn't work out.
So with that being said, and the way that you worded that leads to this, and you must be psychic or something, because I haven't given you any information about what I was going to be asking you, and you keep leading me to the next question. But what are some ethical considerations that should be taken into account when you are using data analytics to measure the department performance and employee productivity? Can you run into some ethical challenges?
So we talk about this, and I tell people, when you come in my office is Switzerland. Whatever is said between me and you stays between me and you. There are some leaders that they will have these conversations with staff, and they don't keep it between them and the staff. So then what ends up happening is it creates a situation amongst the staff, because let's face it, everybody in SPD talk. It's like the soap operas. Everybody talks. Right. It makes it hard to really then go back and have a conversation with a person that needs help, because now they start losing trust in you. And if you are trying to get them to improve their quality or their quantity, it makes it difficult, because it's, as leaders, we are afforded a certain amount of trust by our staff.
Right.
Our staff either trust us or they don't, or they learn to trust us. And the worst thing you can do to your staff is, conversation that you're having about productivity with individuals, you're broadcasting it to everyone else. That's the worst thing you can do. That destroys the trust.
Because once you lose that, then it's kind of hard to get it back if the whole department doesn't trust you. So I do get that. And Bill, I'm not ignoring you. Bill said those last points was outstanding, Angus. Just so you're aware that I'm still reading the thing there. But Becca says your perspective shapes your experience. You see what you choose to see, but what you focus on is what guides your path. That was an awesome answer, Angus. See, I tell you, look at that, dropping jewels all across the whole thing. I like it, Angus. I like it. Now, just with what we were talking about, and we've touched on bringing the front line into the fold as far as getting them to understand what you're looking for as far as productivity. We talked about how you use that same data to leverage your cross-departmental collaborations, i.e. infection control, EVS, OR, so on and so forth. You talked about the ethical dilemma some people find them in when not everybody's on the same page, or you have leaders who, just for the sake of, just argument, not very good leaders. So talking about things that they shouldn't be talking about in the office. When you're talking about the organization, we're talking about the organization now. How can organizations balance the use of data-driven insights with human intuition and experience when making strategic departmental improvements?
Oh, yeah. Well,
because there's always that human element in there, And sometimes, like you just said, you said that because we're looking at this hybrid model of, hey, we're following this hospital because these 10 hospitals do the same thing. But you're going to look at it from your department and say, no, we can't do that here. We're going to measure this. How can an organization balance the two?
Well, the one thing that I always say, and when I'm talking with surgeons, is like I always remind them, until we get robots in SPD, we're always dealing with a human, and with humans, you're always going to have errors. It's how we mitigate those errors.
Okay.
So, having said that, no one's perfect. No one's perfect.
Right.
So, we work, we educate, we work with them. We do as much training as we can to get them to the point where, they're aware, and they have an understanding of what they're doing. But are we going to always be 100% perfect? No. So having said that, I always make it clear to when I'm talking to the surgeons, like there's a human factor that's involved here, and that piece is never going to go away. So there is going to be some kind of level of defect, but considering how many cases we're doing, we're averaging this many defects a week. And the defects that what we call defects are like here. Well, my department has the most stringent attire policy in comparison to the OR. So when I walk through the OR and I see people with bangs hanging out here, hanging out all over the place, and you're going to call me to a room and say, hey, there's a here and your stuff is hanging out, it makes it a little bit challenging, difficult for me to actually kind of, but I will listen to you and I will say, okay, we will do our part, but I want you to understand there is a error in policy in regards to covering and stuff like that.
Look who
So,
joined us, Angus. We got Solyndra in the building. So yeah, just based on those, like those little types of things like that, and leveraging the data, I think that that's the biggest piece for all of what we're doing, is that you have to have some kind of system in place where you are measuring something.
yes,
You have to be taking note of, as you said, if I notice that every Thursday we have this, then okay, is it the same person working? Is it this? Is it that? But you have the documentation to prove what your point is that you're going to make to whoever that may be. It's not like
yes,
you're going half cocked and being like, hey, you're in here today and this is your error, but you're not in there every Thursday. So it can't be that one thing, which may lead to, as we were talking about, could it be a change in process? Could it lead to a different workflow? But you have to have the data to prove that.
right. And you got to answer the questions. Don't always make the assumption.
And I think that's where people, when people were asking me about what we were going to be talking about, I think it's truly because people don't honestly actually know what's measured.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to what you were saying, as far as you keep record of things that happen in the scope room. You keep record of your defects in the OR. You keep record of, just all these little things, but everybody's not measuring the same things. Yeah. So when it comes to gathering data, is there a universal formula for what should be gathered? Or do we go back to what you said and say, hey, it has to be kind of like hospital driven, but these are some key metrics you should be looking at?
Well, there's some universal things, like defects, okay, IUS rates. You have your tray production as well, but also your delayed reprocessing. That's
okay.
That's something that is, depending on what hospital you go to, you can have 9 out of 10 hospitals have delayed reprocessing.
Okay.
So that's data that you should be collecting. We collect data on that too as well. So,
and a lot of people would say that they do the IUSS one because, again, that can help them get more trays. How about turnovers? Same thing, right? If you're turning over the same tray 3 or 4 times a day, that might be something you need to be annotating so that you can look at probably getting another trade there. So I think that people, like I said, don't know how to leverage what they're actually doing in the departments a lot of times. And then what happens when the C-suite is saying, no, we don't have the money for those extra instruments? Then is that data any use to you?
Data is always going to be used to you. Is how it's presented, but it's also who you have also advocating with you.
Okay.
And
All
that's
right.
those relationships that, as leaders, we should be building with other department leaders as well.
Hey, family, we're having a spirited conversation with Mr. Angus Bruce, and he's dropping jewels all over the place, giving us some tidbits about how to leverage the data in our favor. We're going to be right back with him right after this commercial, and we're going to get to the drawing a little. See, she tried to get to the drawing a little later. Make sure you put data in the comments. Make sure you put data in the comments. Right after this commercial, we'll be right back with Angus Bruce. Family, you saw it. Incision.care. Again, if you haven't been there, please go there, request your demo, tell them Time to Talk sent you. Same thing for RST Automation. If you haven't seen the machine in person, or if you haven't seen the demo, definitely reach out to them and get a demo as well. And like I said, these are things that can help you improve your efficiency, your quality, and it prepares you for the innovation. I was going to say it earlier because Angus said, there's no robot. When robots come into the department, I said, please don't open that can of worms, because people have been telling me about this whole robot thing, and we've been talking about it across the seasons because people, there's still a fear that robots are going to take our jobs. So I just want to make sure that, we're not scaring people too much. Okay, we got a couple of questions here. Are there instrument tracking systems that collect better data?
So they're not. They're all different, and we all have our favorites. I would tell you I use a combination of my tracking system and I use smart sheets.
Okay.
And smart sheets are, it's one of those things that you can share. Most institutions now are using smart sheets to collect data. So you have to pull the information from your tracking system and put it into a smart sheet. It's a little bit of extra work, but it gives you nice charts that folks in the C-suites they like.
And so, Lidra, I think that goes back to something we said earlier. For a tracking system, the information you pull out of it is going to be what you're trying to gather. Like if you don't have those extra things in there for like little tasks, and you're not going to get that information. It's not going to pull out the information that's not there for you to try to measure. And you can improve by, I guess, like a lot of tracking systems, you have to buy like extra modules and all this kind of stuff. And how, robust you want to be is how far you'll go into that tracking system. But like he said, he does a combination of things to get the data that he wants. So therefore, just looking at it from that perspective. Angus, I'm going to do something off cuff here. We're going to go ahead and do the drawing, and then we'll take any last questions. So I'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and put Data in the comment section so we can get you in the drawing for this week's gift card. Data in the comment section so we can get you in this week's drawing for the gift card. Since Angus is our guest, he's going to tell us when it's over, and he's going to tell us when to go ahead and do the drawing.
Oh, it's on me now. All right. Do I have to tell you when to stop?
No, you just say go. Man, we're trying to get people trying to put it in there, but if you say go, say go.
Go.
We're going to do this again. Let's see. Who do we have? Who do we have this week? Let's see. Our winner's Becca. Becca, thank you for joining us today. The way this works, you are our winner this week, but in order to claim your prize, you come in next week. In the comments, you say, I am here. Once we see that you're here, you will get the gift card. And I appreciate you for being here and, you know, being an active member here and actually using the platform to get some questions answered and stuff like that. So, Angus, I wanted to go back and just say, we've talked about how overall it can go through and change departments. I wanted to change focus a little bit just because I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. But can you explain to people how data can also help you in terms of employees? Like, you can collect data from surveys, you can do performance and productivity metrics, you can talk about patterns in behavior, absentees, you know, all that kind of stuff. And you collect that data to try to get a more engaged and motivated workforce. Can you talk about how you use that type of data?
Well, so here's the good thing with this. We are all doing this already. As far as I know, most hospitals take part in Press Ganey.
Okay.
And they do these surveys, department surveys, hospital surveys. You get a large data portfolio with people answering, and it tells you what you need to work on. It tells you what people are saying. Some hospitals send out multiple surveys during the course of the year, and that's all data driven. So, you know, to some extent, you are collecting, you are seeing that data, you are putting improvement plans in, and you're already doing that. Not quite sure that you're doing it, but you're doing it. So, you know, the reason for all of that is that, you know, you're basically seeing how you're doing. I mean, I've heard of some department leaders sending out survey monkeys to their staff. I think one of our colleagues, Tony, he did that, and he made some changes based off of the feedback that he received back. So, you know, we don't be afraid to hear how you're doing. You don't want to hear that everything is perfect all the time. All right.
Okay.
That's part of that continuous improvement. You always want to be gathering that feedback from your team. You know, there are going to be things that you can do, and then there are going to be things that you can't do. But, you know, never be afraid to hear, you know, the negative. Everything can't be positive all the time.
There you have it, everybody. Carol, I'll get your last one in. Carol, go back to the tracking system. She said tracking systems still have the human element, and when scan points are missed, it is detrimental to our cause. Yeah, because if you're looking for that tray in an emergency situation and it's not where it's supposed to be, that can cause some, you know, some effects on the back end that somebody's gonna have to answer for. So definitely making sure that human element, we do take that into consideration. Family, I've been here with Angus, Bruce, and we have, you know, talked about everything data and how it can shape a department, how it can help a department, and how it can get you more traction when you go to the C-suite. These are things that in your departments, it is your responsibility to try to make sure that you have some kind of program in place. Again, Angus talked about on-time starts. He talked about IUSS, little things like that. I know, like I said, I've been a part of systems where, you know, we had metrics where people were answering the phone, going to the door, emptying the cart washer. We put those into our tracking system so that we can measure how many times these things are happening and pulling people away from the workstation. These are all things that are real. So therefore, having that at your fingertips is always going to be detrimental. So Angus, as I always do, what kind of words would you part the people with as it refers to data? What can you give them as a nugget to take home with them tonight, sir?
Don't be afraid of the numbers. The numbers tell a story, and you got to be willing to listen to the story.
Plain and simple. Don't be afraid of the numbers. You got to be willing to listen to the story because the numbers tell a story. I kind of like that one, Angus. I like that one. I might have to put that in a book or something. Quoted by Angus. I got you.
As long as I get royalties.
I said, I'm gonna put your name there. Quoted by Angus. I got you. Listen to the story. The numbers tell a story. Family. Hey, it's been time to talk. We had Angus Bruce. Great segment. Come back next week. Next week, I'm gonna do something very interesting. I'm gonna have a roundtable discussion about challenges in SPD as told through the eyes of a frontline leader, a director, a doctor, and I think somebody from Nigeria. I think I'm gonna give y'all a whole bunch of stuff because they do stuff differently in other places. So now we're gonna see what challenges they have compared to what challenges we have and see how we can collaborate and come up with some solutions together. So time to talk next week, roundtable discussion, big challenges in sterile processing. Family. See y'all again next week, same time, same place. Don't forget, learn to listen so people are willing to talk. Get your pre-order copy today. Make sure you reach out to us. Thank you, Angus. I appreciate you. Family, see you soon.
Thank you.
In a world overflowing with noise, are you truly being heard? Or better yet, are you truly listening? Kenneth Campbell, industry author and expert in sterilization, is back with his latest book, Learn to Listen, so others are willing to talk. This book isn't just about hearing words. It's about understanding, connecting, and building trust. Whether you're leading a team, navigating relationships, or simply striving for better conversations, these practical strategies will transform the way you communicate. Imagine a world where every conversation leads to deeper connections, resolved conflicts, and greater influence. It's possible when you learn to listen. Are you ready to elevate your communication and create meaningful relationships? Learn to listen, so others are willing to talk. Available now.